All what we're talking about for me is part of wealth.
Correct.
Culture, tradition, and history is part of wealth.
And the legacy it's left.
I want to increase the wealth of black people in the UK and beyond. Property, there's pensions, there's stocks and shares, etc., etc. But there's all the other things that lead to a full and happy and fulfilling life. Paying interest. And the way that it's set up is that interest accrues exponentially as well. So the system's against you. You should focus on guilt instead of shame, because guilt focuses on action, whereas shame focuses on you, the person. Guilt is, I did a bad thing. Shame is, I am bad. And if you have shame, that's really, really difficult to come out of. But if you can separate yourself from the thing, hate the sin, not the sinner, so to speak.
You sound like a pastor, mate.
Now, this is another special episode, right? Because I get to speak to a good friend of mine, Rotimi Merriman-Johnson, also known as Mr. Money Jar. And in this episode, it's kind of interesting because you normally see him talking about personal finance, right? But in this conversation, we go everywhere. We talk about his name, we talk about religion, we talk about all sorts of interesting things. And it's the kind of podcast I actually really enjoy making, where people are sharing with me stuff they don't share anywhere else, right? And you're getting to see a different side of people. So I would love for you to listen to this, right? Enjoy the whole episode. It's so funny. And we're sort of laid back. I think we recorded it. Both of us have had appointments at the start of the day. So we're very laid back, a bit tired, and we just had a great conversation. So sit back, enjoy the episode, drop a comment, and I will see you at the end.
Timmy, how are you? We haven't started, don't worry.
Okay.
Okay, I feel like this is what Joe Rogan would be like, you know. What's funny about Joe, I don't know if you watch him, but I was watching one episode and he was like, hold on guys, I'm gonna go use the toilet real quick. And he literally got up and went out. And his guest was kind of dead like that. And then it went black. And then they came back like, alrighty. I just love that sort of...
I think, so his style of interview is, it's almost as if you're in the living room with them on the couch. And so that adds, you're telling me about it, that adds to the experience. And then on the other end, it's like cue cards, questions 1 to 10.
I think there's something about it that gets the best out of people. Like when people feel relaxed, I reckon they say more, they get into more detail, it's more sort of like natural. So hopefully I could be like Joe Rogan. It's very hard because I don't know what it is. It's that training thing of, I've always been trained, especially in interviews, to sort of ask a question as lucidly as you can, sort of set someone up for a layup, then sit back and watch them do their thing. And it's that's good sometimes, but it's also nice to go back and forth. Yeah. And this is a good starting point for us. I was talking to Ginger off camera about how personal finance content tends to be very samey. We talk about debt, you talk about how to invest, and then people kind of go, and you kind of go, okay, there's so much personal finance content out there, but people are still needing it. So what's going on
What's happening? What's happening is content creators are making a lot of money by promoting financial products and services, and their posts are getting engagement, but then it's what's the next step? And people need to take action. But then what I've also found is money is it's so all encompassing, so you need to niche it down. And if you conceptualize of this as being like a TV with
casual flex,
my Pro Max 17 as a TV with an infinite number of channels, then that means that there should be more and more niche, more and more specific types of conversations. I mean, there's a subreddit for maple syrup, for goodness sake. So if you want to talk about that, that's where you can go. So I'm a big fan now of money and.
And I've seen that. I think we were talking before about how, just having had you on the podcast in previous times, your content's kind of morphed and shifted. And I remember when I first I think it was 2 offices ago. Yeah. I count everything by offices now. Yeah. You were in our space and we were having a conversation about literally finance. You're talking about finance and that was it. And now I see you literally do so many different things. I was on LinkedIn the other day. You were with QuickBooks doing something with them. You're coming from, I don't know if I'm allowed to say you're coming from NatWest. Is that okay? You weren't setting up an account.
Yeah.
You were speaking at a panel. Like, how has your content sort of changed over the years? How do you reflect back on that?
It's a great question. So I got started in 2019, having not really used Instagram before. And I didn't even want to go on socials.
Are you like a boomer or something? Or?
Yeah, like at heart, I'm a bit of an old man. So I wasn't really on socials like that. And I started off Money Jar. I didn't start Mr. Money Jar. It was just Money Jar, and it was a blog. But no one read it. So I then looked at where everyone was, and they were on the socials. And I went to Insta. I would say the first year of Insta was very much about posting square images to social media because that was the only format that was available. It's crazy to think about how much social media has evolved in this short space of time. So it was just image posts. I got known for my infographics at the time, and I would also kind of take pop culture references and then combine them with financial concepts. So,
like what?
Like I used the Nando's Peri Peri scale to explain the income tax brackets, for example. Yeah, and I would do little pictures and stuff, and they do really well. And then I branded it red as well because everything in finance at the time was like either green or blue or something, but like the red really stood out. And then next year it's like Instagram Live. That's like the Instagram Live period.
I really do miss Instagram Live.
Yeah, Clubhouse type period. So we're in lockdown and people are doing lives and clubhouses and stuff because we can't go anywhere, but people still want that human connection. So that was quite cool. I built a lot of relationships in that time as well because I ended up interviewing most people in my niche. And then the year after that, it was kind of like Diary of a CEO style video podcasts. That's when those things really started to pop off. And so I tried a little bit of that at the time. Actually, I set up a podcast for like a few months under a different name. But
what was it? If we wanted to go find it.
It was called Be Good With Money. And I don't know how much of it exists right now, but the Mr. Money Jar brand is really strong. Maybe we can get into this later, but I don't know why it's so strong. But like people have often heard of it before they even have heard of me, like the founder of it.
Well, do you know those, what are those things called? It's like a TV show where it's like Mr. Sad, Mr. Happy.
Oh, Mr. Men.
The Mr. Men, yeah. So it kind of feels like an offshoot of that.
Yeah.
Like I can kind of see a red guy with like a head thing.
I designed that. So I'm working.
Was that by design?
I'm working on it. So it was I did kind of have I was like, what if I could become one of the Mr. Men? But obviously, you literally.
Oh.
So I designed him.
Why? It looks like I've seen that image before, but I don't think I actually have.
I posted him to socials.
Well, there you go. So maybe that's why, is that it kind of has that sort of Mr. whatever. So we've already had all those years of sort of seeing that, and so it's just Mr. Money Jar.
Yeah.
Kind of after Mr. Happy or Mrs. Happy, whatever she is. Or they are.
Little Miss.
Oh, Little Miss Happy.
Mr. Little Miss.
Very gendered language. But
I know. I don't know if that will fly.
No.
Fly now. So you had like the video podcast stuff, and then I would say the year after that it was then about like being somewhere in real life because people all podcasted out. Like anyone could just get a studio and start yapping. So if you were speaking on stage or whatever, and then what I found in the last year. The last 12 months is it's not enough to just talk about money. You need to have an angle. And we're seeing tribes start to form online, and tribes are an extension of human nature. Like people connect with people that they can relate to, that they feel look and sound like them. Simon Sinek had a really great video on this where he talked about how just very simply, if you as a British person go to America and you're standing in the queue in the airport and you hear a British accent, you're gonna be like, I can relate to that person.
Yeah, pretty much immediately.
Yeah, because even if like they're not even necessarily the same ethnicity as you, or if maybe they live up north, you live down south, you're gonna like lock onto that because it reminds you of home. So seeing that happen on social media platforms and on social media algorithms, and I thought about like my own content and like, where do I have the permission space to show up? Which community would I like to speak to? Do I feel qualified to speak to? Do I feel is currently being underserved in the financial industry? And it's Black British people. It's the community that we're from. Like, to your point, it's interesting how there's loads of financial content coming out, but then you look at kind of the real world outcomes and they don't seem to be shifting. I kind of feel that way about us. I feel like there's so much said about Britain as a whole, so much data and information is shared about the national average, but then when you look at incomes for Black Brits, they're like the same. So I wanted to create formats and content for us, and that's taken shape in terms of the content I post to my personal socials, but also in terms of the Mr. Money Jar show, which you very kindly came on.
And it was really good. I mean, it was well shot. It was beautiful. I came back with so many ideas about, we could do this with our set. We could do this without. But away from all of that, it was also very good to have a conversation, sort of knowing who I'm talking to. Yes. So I obviously speak to Black people. I'm Black. But I spend a lot of time in non-Black spaces just by virtue of what I do. So it's really nice to be speaking, or to at least know that you're speaking to people who look like you, who sound like you. And I love that evolution as well.
Thank you. And like, I feel very, very, pleased, privileged, proud to have a very engaged audience around the content I'm putting out now. Like, for example, this week's episode is with a guy called Toby Okay, Nigerian
what
guy.
does he do?
He's a lifestyle creator on TikTok. It's like 65,000 on TikTok. And I've just done a clip of him talking about, he's got quite a deep voice and he has
deeper than mine.
It's very deep.
Oh.
Yeah. Wow. There's a lot of ladies liking his voice in the comments as well.
Ridiculous.
And he speaks with a received pronunciation accent, like / dialect. And he's talking about being called a bounty and a coconut at school.
That's a very interesting topic.
And it's like, it's on its way to 100,000 views because there's so many people in there going, yeah, this was my school experience. This was my experience at work. This is my experience at uni. And when you look at Black British media, in the main, it's either hyper aspirational, i.e., here's how to retire with multi-millions by the time you're in your 30s, or it's the Shade Borough. Well, the Shade Borough pre-bouncer. I don't know if you've been following.
Yeah. Well, I saw him give a clip. It's a shame we live in this clip world. But there's like a clip of him giving the founders or the owners of the Shade Borough like 24 hours.
Yeah.
It's just so funny.
Yeah, that's... those words, I'm sure, will end many a career. But
you have 24 hours.
Yeah, 24 hours.
Quick, on this bounty thing, though. Obviously, I haven't watched the clip, so sorry if I'm commenting at a place. But I do remember, like, I was speaking on a panel years ago, something like, probably like 7 years ago. And I remember this coming up about this idea of, like, Black people. Obviously, I grew up in Southeast London. And I do think whether you like it or not, we all kind of code switch to a certain degree. Like if some young people meet me at an event and I can tell where they're from, and they're like, "Yo, what's up?" I'm not gonna be like, "Good to meet." Like I just sort of randomly switch back into being in secondary school, right? Yeah. But there's a bit of nuance about this whole speak and posh thing that I think is kind of interesting. In that, definitely there are some people who think enunciating and speaking quote unquote properly is a white thing, right? But I do think it would be disingenuous as well to not say that in some people's mind, they do look at, when they think about who speaks well, they do think about like some prominent white people, right? And so there's a bit of people who are trying to copy, someone they've seen online, maybe some news reporter on BBC, whatever. So it's not totally fair to just be like, oh no, I'm just speaking properly. This is colorblind. It's like, let's be real. It's not colorblind. However, that interplay is where I think there isn't a lot. There's not space for people to discuss. Like, why do you speak the way you speak?
So that's literally what the podcast is about, and it's the reason why I'm facilitating those conversations. It's so that everyone can have their say. Now, on that particular clip, most people are backing him and agreeing with him, but there's been a couple of detractors as well.
What was he saying?
He was saying that Black people are not a monolith, and that we, depending on our social exposures and where we grew up and the type of schools we go to and so on, that's going to determine how you speak, and that we should have the freedom to just be, like, regardless of how we speak, regardless of how we sound, look, whatever, we're all Black. And that's a sentiment that I can agree with. But the reason why I think it's landed is because people haven't seen this type of conversation from us before. Yeah. So that's what I'm trying to facilitate. And you find that when you specify for people in this algorithmic world we live in, where essentially you're in the business of stopping thumbs, right? People doing that, and then you're like, okay, I need to.
Very interesting way to put it.
Yeah, I need to stop on this piece of content. I need to watch it. The most perfect way for me to do that with you is to do a post that starts saying, Mike, stop, I need to talk to you. But not everyone's called Mike. So you need to find other ways to pre-select people in the first 5-10 seconds of your video so that they stay. And then you can do that with formats and the like as well. So that's where I'm at the moment. You affectionately called it my black phase earlier.
Black, you should, this is a podcast, so you have to enunciate well. Black phase,
my black
not
phase.
Black face.
Yeah. My black phase. And do you know, I take that feedback because
it wasn't feedback. It was literally a passing comment. I don't want you to take it and like frame it or anything.
But what I want to say about that is that I am being intentional with it. Like I've said on another podcast actually that like I've wanted to do this for so long, but I felt scared too. I felt scared that if I do niche down, will I alienate people? If I speak along racial and ethnic lines, will that be seen as not brand safe? But actually, I'm having really productive conversations with brands where I'm saying, look, there's 3.3 million Black British people in the country. We are largely situated in London. We have a lower average age than the average population. We have a differing level of wealth. We have differing family structures, culture, whatever. And you're not reaching them. But I am. So have a think about how you can reach this group of people, which in the main are very interested in building wealth, very optimistic, and looking very much towards the future. Like you need to include them in your comms and in your product and service offerings as well.
Yeah, and they're upwardly socially mobile.
Yep.
They're entrepreneurial, so on and so forth.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll be honest. I love seeing that journey that you're on of like evolving and stuff like that. I know it's like the thing to say, like you're evolving, but it is beautiful. And I think anyone who's like achieved success, from what I can see in the content game or in this sort of game, are people who sort of like understand. This is one of the reasons why I haven't had success.
You're successful.
Whatever.
Sat in your studio.
Yeah, yes, sure. But it's because like I'm an old fart, right? I'm gonna stick. I'm gonna stay here. I'm learning to change, right? But I do think those who pivot and understand the sort of the mood and the sort of lingua franca of the time, those are who are willing to sort of pivot. Like, so you mentioned like. I forgot who you mentioned, but like someone that comes to mind is someone like Stephen Bartlett. I don't know if you mentioned him or he just came to mind, but like I remember listening to his early podcast, which is called Diary of a CEO, right? Yep. And there was a stage where he generally would have a CEO on a podcast and they'll just talk about like business, like growing business, whatever. I remember famously listening to like the Monzo episode where like the founder of Monzo and
Tom Bloomfield.
This was the one, and he was like arguing with the founder of Starlin, and they were going, and he had them back to back, and it was like, this is so cool. Like as a early business guy, I love that sort of stuff. I don't think his podcast is recognizable compared to like that sort of episode.
At the time of speaking, he's just had Kevin Hart on.
This is it, right? So like he's morphed, adapted, and yeah, sure, there's some people who are like, I missed that CEO deep dive, and it's like there's a million podcasts out there that are these CEO deep dives. I think he's really. And I think he should get his flowers more. I don't know if he gets it in the Black community enough, but I think he's actually done really, really well to curate a really interesting podcast. Now, do I love every episode he puts out? No, there's some weird stuff that, I don't watch it, right? So there's times where I just read the headline. Maybe that's a problem. But I'll read one headline and it'll be like, calorie counting is amazing. You need to do it to lose weight. Then the other one will be like, calories that exist. And I'm like, yeah. I'm like, brother, come on. But he's done really well, and I think he's morphed really well with the time and understood the mood. And I think the way I always see it is there's some people who are clearly married to the outcome, but not the process. And so they're willing to shape shift if they have to, but the fixed goal is still in mind. With you, how would you, as you're changing and sort of learning and adapting your format, what are you trying to do? Like more broadly, like is there a fixed goal and you're sort of morphing, and what is that fixed goal? I
turned 36 a couple of weeks ago. So I'm actually at a point in my life where I'm like, if we go by just the average life expectancy of a male in this country, I could be halfway through my life.
Well, of a Nigerian, it's pretty wild. Do you know the average life expectancy of a Nigerian?
Well, we actually live slightly longer than the average population, black men and black women, respectively.
So no, in Nigeria.
Oh, in Nigeria, isn't it like 55?
55.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah. In the UK, it's early 80s, and then black women live longer than everyone. It's like 89 almost. I'm like, I might only have another 4 decades left, and then I pass away. So I'm thinking in decades, and I'm thinking about what do I want to achieve with my life, and what do I want to leave behind, and how do I want to be remembered. I'm not like entrapped by that at all, because like once you're gone, you're not there to listen to what people say about you. But now that I'm here, I'm looking forward and thinking about what kind of journey do I want to go on. And my answer to your question is, I want to increase the wealth of black people in the UK and beyond. That's something that I feel like I can really make a dent in, and it's a really specific goal and an outcome. And obviously there's financial wealth, so there's property, there's pensions, there's stocks and shares, etc., but there's all the other things that lead to a full and happy and fulfilling life. So I would want to see a safeguarding of the black nuclear family, which at the moment in the UK, if you look at the data, is kind of like 50-50 whether you'll grow up in a single parent household or not. I want to see us doing well at school. I want to see us getting good jobs. I want to see us getting and staying married, looking after our kids, being happy, being healthy. All of these things are part of black wealth for me. It's not just a purely financial thing.
I love that. And I think that holistic approach is really interesting. Like on this topic of life expectancy, right? Because I was watching a documentary recently talking about this, hence why I became really animated about it. I mean, do you know the country that has the highest life expectancy in the world?
So I'm aware of the blue zones, of which Italy is one, Japan is another, I think Greece is another. I know Spain has quite a high one, but no, where?
The highest country apparently is Monaco.
Okay.
Which incidentally has the highest population of millionaires in the world. So like you've got this kind of relatively innocuous sort of small place where lots of rich people are at. Literally, I think 1 in 4 people are millionaires, something like that. It's ridiculous. And there's a connection, right? Because they're millionaires, they're able to kind of pay to alleviate themselves of stress. So you just get rid of stress. Healthcare is just, I think I forgot the stats, but like there's a ridiculous amount of like doctors to like civilians sort of thing. Like there's just so many doctors. They're able to have a sort of slower pace of life, luxury living,
healthier food.
And then you juxtapose that with like Nigeria, where, I mean, there's like one doctor for like, 10,000 citizens or something like that, which is just ridiculous or whatever it is. Terrible living conditions, stress, somehow Nigerians are still one of the most joyful people I know. I mean, there's a joy that you get when you walk through the streets of Lagos that like isn't anywhere else in the world, I would say. Like I remember growing up and just even when I was young, my strongest memories are of people like laughing to their belly hurts and playing Ludo outside and not having much, but like having the world at the same time. But anyways, when you kind of add it all together, like wealth actually has like lots of like implications in how long you'll live, the kind of quality of life you'll have. And so not that I'm a money person. Oh, incidentally, there's another thing, which is quite interesting. It was this thing was also talking about how one of the reasons why there's such a high or the infant mortality so high or whatever it is in Nigeria is because of religion.
Go on.
So rather than go into hospitals or going to get treatment, folks will say, God will do it. So I was watching this other YouTube video with this YouTuber who went to Nigeria and he went to interview all these old people and was like, why are you old? What's your secret? They're like, oh, it's the Lord. And incidentally, if people are sick, sometimes they go, well, one, you can't afford medicine anyways, but then you'd also say God will protect me, or God will keep me safe. And so you've got a lot of people refusing. And to be fair, I think more work needs to be done to find out, are they refusing because of faith, or is it that they can't afford it, so they're forced to rely on faith? But I think that interplay with wealth, life expectations, quality of life, I find really fascinating.
Yeah, no,
it's not about income, it's about wealth, which is the other piece.
Yeah, income is like what comes into and out of your bank account, but wealth is more about what you have and what it then produces. I did want to say that it's good that you mentioned the child mortality, because child mortality does bring down life expectancy data. So I'd be interested to know how many children there are in Monaco, for example, or whether it's like just a country of older,
old people
wealthy,
really who are retiring, like living extremely long.
Because incidentally, the reason why it's the Black African life expectancy is so high in the UK is because Black people make up 4% of the population. And so you're not getting data that's representative of the whole country. You're getting data that is of that 4%, many of whom moved here. So it's there's a bit of survivorship bias in there, but it's still true. Interesting you mentioned the religion point and the interplay with health as well. I'm on a bit of a spiritual journey, I would say. So I was raised Christian. Spent many a Sunday in KICC Sunday school.
That's the one with where the pastor has a high top.
With Pastor Matthew Ashimalowo.
Let's go, man. Hey, that high top is fine. It's holding a lot of Christianity. And it's a strong
lid.
It's a strong lid.
So I grew up Christian. My dad's side of the family, the Merriman-Johnson side of the family, is from the Methodist tradition. And then my mum...
let's go Wesley.
I think... Sorry?
No, I was just saying, let's go Wesley.
But my mum is more of the Pentecostal side. Weirdly, I also went to a Catholic primary school. But I was never allowed to eat the bread and the wine because I hadn't been confirmed or whatever they call it. And then I got to university and I didn't become...
What uni did you go to?
Warwick.
Okay.
I didn't become atheist, but due to life experiences that I'd had at that point in time, and it's just the really low contact hours relative to school, I went through a period of like, I would say depression, but also like nihilism. So not really understanding why I'm here, what life is all about. And I came away from Christianity. I wouldn't go so far as to say that I was atheist, because I'm like, well, the fact that there is stuff, it's like you either collapse into two arguments, right? Stuff just appeared, or there was an initial creator, initial domino flicker, first mover that then set the chain of events into motion, whatever you want to call them.
Hey there, if you are enjoying this podcast so far, then I have a small favor to ask. Would you consider subscribing or following wherever you're watching or listening to this? You know, it's a small thing you're doing. However, it makes a really big impact on the podcast, because if more of you subscribe, then we're able to attract even bigger guests. So would you do that for me real quick? Okay, back to the episode.
And then I would say in the last 5 years, I haven't come back to Christianity. I've actually spent a lot of time studying Nigeria's history. So the colonial history of the 1900s, and then the transatlantic slave trading period before that. And I'm actually interested in looking at traditional Yoruba religion, because it predates the advent of Christianity in Nigeria. I think Portuguese tried to bring Christianity to Nigeria. Well, Nigeria's like 50-50 Muslim in the north, Christian in the south. It's been Muslim since I think the 11th century. And then in the south, the Portuguese tried to bring Christianity in the 1500s. It didn't really stick. And then the British came in the 1800s. And we're like, oh, here's a Bible.
They did their thing.
Yeah, give us your palm oil.
Yeah.
And then now, most of sub-Saharan Africa is like Christian, but like most of that has been since the 1900s. That spread of religion. So I'm very interested in what we were doing prior to the arrival of Europeans in Africa, because I feel like it's closer to who we are, it's our heritage. What I find interesting is that my name is Rotimi.
Oh.
But the Olu, which means God, isn't talking about the Christian God. My name existed prior to Christianity. If you look in a Yoruba Bible, Olorun is the word for God, but that's what Yoruba people have been calling God since the beginning. So I'm still on that journey. I'm still kind of looking into it. But when you go back to the beginning and you look at like the moments just before the Big Bang and just the energy that was there, like that's either God or God created that energy. Like it's got to have come from somewhere. I don't know if you thought we'd be talking about that in this podcast, but here we are.
No, it's all welcome. This is part of the new season.
Yeah.
We No, I'm joking. I mean, I think what's so, for me, refreshing about all of this is the word journey, I think, has been co-opted, of course, by the sort of postmodernist, Foucault-loving folk. But I do think if we take a few steps back, that is the best way to describe faith, right? It's a journey. People go on journeys and they ask questions and they get deeper. Funny enough, I'm actually, my current study, I'm currently studying two things. One is I'm looking at, as you can probably imagine, I'm looking at the Middle East right now. So that's a key area of research for me. I'm reading a bunch of books about Iran before this kind of current Ayatollah, but also Israel, Palestine. I'm doing a lot of deep research on that. And the other thing I'm also researching is the empire. I'm taking a look at the British Empire. There's a book by Blagger called Empire, where he sort of his argument is that the thin and flat way people sort of describe the British Empire as uniquely evil, his argument is that it's actually more complicated, right? The empire wasn't just uniquely evil; it spread all sorts of kind of good things around the world and bad things. And there's reformers, and it's not trying to sanitize empire as much, but it's trying to explore the various push and pull sort of efforts to end it, to continue it, etc. I'm not convinced so far by his arguments, but I'm reading it. Anyways, so like all of that is me taking things that I historically have studied before and have a position on, but I'm revisiting and just trying to sort of approach it with fresh eyes. It's very tough. Like once you have a fixed mind, you have a fixed mind. But I'm still trying to like piece by piece pull things apart and go, have I changed my perspective? Obviously, I'm older now. I understand the importance of nuance and balance and history and how, people often write history in 2D, but in reality, like the present is 3D, as you know. Like if you ask, what does this generation think about the Middle East? It'd be a ridiculous question, but there'll probably be some book in 50 years that's like, back then they all loved Israel. And you're like, no, that's not how it works. Yeah. So yeah, I say all of that to say that I validate and I really believe in the journey you're going on. I think one just has to keep exploring, if I'm being frank. Of course, I have perspectives. I'm a Christian, so I can speak. And I'm interested in history as well, so I'm happy to go into that. But I do think, though, I mean, this is a hard pivot away from finances, but I do think...
all what we're talking about for me is part of wealth.
Correct.
Culture, tradition, and history is part of wealth.
And the legacy it's left, right? So you talk about the transatlantic slave trade and say the wealth gap. Well, the most pernicious sort of materialization of that is America. Yes. You look at black people in America, African Americans in particular, like their fortune or misfortune, however you look at it, can be traced directly back to like the slave trade.
Their financial, yes, but also, like their names. Like these are people from parts of Africa, but they can't trace their heritage back past a certain number of generations. And so they've lost that part of their culture, their heritage. That leaves a chasm as well.
And it's why, for sure. And it's why they're so eager. I mean, and they're sort of like a captive audience in a sense, because how quickly they adopted and fell in love with this whole Wakanda stuff shows you the deep hunger there is for like something deeper and something sort of just not American, for a better term. But of course, Wakanda is not real. I remember seeing like a TikTok one time where some guy was like, he was recording himself. It's always weird when guys are recording girls, but he's recording a woman and he was like, "My Wakanda sister," and I was just like, I cringed so much, like. Because they do lose that relational wealth, for want of a better term, that goes back to like their ancestry. I mean, the truth is, in Africa, as you know, I mean, Christianity writ large predates European colonialism. When you look at places like Ethiopia, However, it is the case that at least Christianity was a religion of empire, right? It was what in some cases created a willing population who were happy to sort of acquiesce.
Yeah, it is for me, it is a Middle Eastern tradition which was then taken by Rome and then spread to parts of Europe, and then Britain then came with their empire and then spread it across the world. Because another good book to read is *Sapiens*, and *Sapiens*,
I like *Sapiens*
by Yuval Noah Harari.
Although it's a tough read, I think it's quite dense. So I remember reading and thinking, this is going to be a fun book. And I think a third of the way in, I was like, this is so dense.
Okay, interesting. It's a very, very long book, but I found it a massive page turner just because there were lots of concepts in there that I hadn't heard of. But that book will show you that the world is just empire after empire. Correct. Like America's colonizing the world right now. If in a way, if through corporation and culture, like we grow up watching Disney movies, using Google phones, using Apple phones, singing songs in American accents and stuff, and we'll look back now and there'll be this thing of like, and also like all the social media, like how we share information, how we'll probably share this podcast probably via an American corporation. I don't know if Match Group Incorporated, which is the owner of like Tinder and Hinge and stuff, is American, but like even the way that we meet and stuff is like a company, and that is complex because we'll look back at now and we'll be like, we loved Disney movies, but we also wished that we had our own thing, either in Britain or wherever. But yeah, back to the religion point. So I think we are going on a similar journey in the sense of you get to a certain age and you look at what's going on in the world and you go, why has there been a conflict in Israel and Palestine for so long? Why is my surname Merriman-Johnson? Why is it not a Yoruba surname? And then you just start to gently deconstruct things and then go down the rabbit hole. AI tools are really good for this as well. You can start off with premises and then it kind of tells you, and then you can go away and do the reading. And I'd massively recommend for you, if you're studying empire, to read Black and British, A Forgotten History by David Olusoga.
I know that book.
Yeah, so there's two versions of it. There's the hench one, that's quite long, but then there's the shorter light blue version, which is like I think 4 or 5 hour audio book.
I've watched a lot of stuff that David's done. I'm a bit like on this Black. When I first sort of did my first deep dive, David was a key reference point. Yeah, as was Afua Hirsch and a lot of her broadcasting. So I found them very, especially her sort of book, Black British, and exploring sort of, like, sort of the interplay of both and all that sort of stuff. So that was really good. I think what I'm really interested in now is taking a look at things that like prima facie seem very like clearly bad, and I want to just take a deeper look. So even like stuff like, even like Hitler, for instance, right? I remember one of my pastors was reading a book about Hitler once. I remember walking past his whatever, and I saw a book about Hitler, and I was like, sorry.
What were you reading here?
What's going on here, buddy? What's happening? And it was just like assessing like what made, like, how was Hitler able to convince a whole generation, a group of people, that this is right. Yep. And how Hitler's work was built on the work of reformers of the church. Like Calvin wrote some beautiful prose and then was like, burn the Jews. And Martin Luther was like, in Christ alone, and kill the Jews. And you're like, whoa. Yeah. And a lot of their work was actually what Hitler built his sort of theological underpinning, his justification, if you like. His treatise for what he was doing, he built on their work. So all that stuff was deeply troubling to me as a child, because again, I would like to read a history that's 2D, where the bad guys were red, the good guys were green, and you go, nice. But in reality, things are quite complicated. There's guys who I would get a tattoo of their quotes, in Christ alone. I'm like, yeah. And then when I read their other works, I'm like, how did you write that and that? Yeah. And as you look back, you go, history is very murky. Yeah. And there are really no heroes. And this great man theory of history, it's just that, a theory. In reality, there are no great men. There are flawed, complicated, duplicitous, hypocritical men. This is where my Christian comes in, right? Christianity comes in. There's only one man I would say is good, and he died in 2nd century Palestine.
And to as a build on what you're saying, even like Adam Smith, you know,
Wealth of Nations, so on and so forth.
widely seen as one of the like forefathers of capitalism. He wrote Wealth of Nations. A lot of the ideas that are in that book we practice to this day when it comes to how we transact, when it comes to like money and business and so on. And people herald him as like almost like the prophet of capitalism. But if you look at the things he had to say for people about people who weren't white, he did not have nice things to say about us savages. And when you then look at like how wealth is distributed in the world, and you look at what's happening in places like the Congo with like the cobalt mines and stuff, you see a lot of those initial assumptions still playing out in real time. And this is why I think we should study history. History is interesting, but then I think ultimately it's there to be instructive. We're supposed to study history so that we can not repeat the same mistakes and understand why the world is the way it is today. And I think it's even more pertinent now that we're living in a political climate where it seems like being able to be racist, for example, or xenophobic or whatever, it's like it's now coming back in vogue. It's like an acceptable thing to do.
I find, so that for me is so fascinating because I've been looking at this. So my master's thesis, my undergrad was about how I researched how Nigel Farage, I've been studying this man since I was a child. I studied how Nigel Farage slowly shifted political discourse in the UK, like to the right. You know, how he was able to uniquely basically shift the Overton window such that things that we were like, you know, you only whispered at, you know, the back of a bus somewhere. Now it's on mainstream sort of news. Because in 2007, you know, famously, David Cameron, you know, discarded him as a sort of, he said UKIP was a party of fruitcakes and loonies. So, you know, everyone's like, yes, it's just a ridiculous party. No one has time for him. No one has time for that. Now, any poll, reputable polls as well, that are forecasting that he'll be the next prime minister of this country. That's a wild move, right? And again, things that we used to say, or people used to say in dark rooms, you know, smoking cigars, you know, like under the cloak of whatever, now are saying it. They're saying publicly, you know, get rid of all of them, deport all of them. We don't need them here. And you go, what's happened? And Coulter, let's say that in American politics, is now seen as moderate. When back in the day, she was a crazy right-wing lady. But so far has the Overton window shifted that a lot of these ideas now have been incubated, and now they're like the mainstream ideas. And you go, how did this happen?
I do think social media has played a role because the shift that we've seen in the last 10, 20 years is that now anyone can broadcast their opinion to millions and millions of people. So even if you had like a racist viewpoint or problematic viewpoint before, it either stayed in your head or in the vicinity that you're in. But now you have these information superhighways like Instagram and X and stuff where you can post it, and then you can kind of coalesce an audience around what you're saying. And that's kind of goes back to what I was saying about like these tribes popping up. And then when you then combine that with like the economy struggling or people feeling alone, or lack of community, whatever, then that really allows ideas to flourish. And then they have real world consequences. I was so like shocked when Nigel Farage announced that he wanted to get rid of indefinite leave to remain. Used, cost saving that was like not even a correct figure, like the think tank that did it said on their website. And then all the mainstream media were like, okay, come in and explain to us why this fake thing, which you know is racist, basically, why you're saying that. So I think the next 4 years is going to be very interesting indeed. And I would caution people to not be led down the wrong path. Brexit was like a really big mistake for this country. I think most people.
I think if you're, it's funny. I was having a conversation with someone about this a few months ago, and we were going back and forth on Brexit. So I was a UK young ambassador to the European Union. Yeah. So I was super involved in the campaign to remain, but also I did 2 years of work in Brussels and stuff like that. And it's the most frustrating thing in the world where, like, objectively speaking, economically speaking, Brexit was a mistake.
It's not worked.
That's just full stop. But what you'll hear back is it wasn't about economics. It was about sovereignty and giving this country its power back and parliamentary sovereignty and things like that. Now, to that, you can't argue. If someone's saying that the main reason they voted out was because they felt like we were being controlled by some, shielded group of people who are unaccountable, so on and so forth, sure. I just don't believe that argument because we have a monarchy. You can't tell me that you're all about democracy and accountability. You have some guy who allegedly had relations with like young girls, rather than going to court, pay them off. And only now, when the public furores got so loud, did they strip him of his title. I'm talking about Andrew, because he's not Prince Andrew anymore, right? So you got these guys that are unaccountable, unelected. You're happy to have them. But it's the random, council of ministers that you didn't directly elect or European commissioners that you have a problem with. So economically speaking, it's been a problem. It hasn't worked. But people just shift the goalpost. And my fear is, I hate to be one of those, again, old farts, but it just feels as though people aren't logically appraising things anymore. And we're kind of entering an era of just emotionalism, where Nigel Farage in particular, but others have kind of sussed that if we can whip up people's emotions and get them sufficiently angry, annoyed, frustrated, we can basically control them because they'll do whatever we want. Because the fact that Nigel Farage still doesn't have to explain things, how do the numbers add up? I remember when he was doing the long form political interview is dead, and that's a big problem. It used to be powerful when Paxman would sit someone opposite him like this and would say, explain how this will grow the economy. We're not cutting you off. It's not any argument. We've got 2 hours. Explain. And suddenly you start seeing people tripping out because they're used to kind of getting away with a soundbite. So he was in an interview with Bloomberg. People can watch it online. And this lady was obviously you talked about, he said something like make Great Britain great again, whatever, right? Which is cool. Borrowed it from America. It's kind of funny. And she said, so when would you say Great Britain was great? You're talking down the country a lot. Take us back in time where you think we were really great. This man was stuttering all over. It just after World War One, and you're just like, this. You want us to go back to World War One? Really? So, and you could tell he hadn't really there was no philosophy. There's no political philosophy underpinning everything he says. It's just pure emotionalism and hype. Right? Hype energy. You've got a uniquely incompetent prime minister who just struggles to articulate any sort of sense of vision. I feel like a sneeze would be more inspiring, than any speech he's ever given. He's just so uninspiring. It's kind of nuts. And then in the chasm, if you like, of this leadership, you've got this guy he just says anything and gets away with it. And it actually really annoys me sometimes when I go, make him explain. Explain how that works. Explain. Yeah. And he just doesn't do it.
It's difficult to not feel like they're in on it. The people who... Because as a researcher, my background's in research, I am so careful about the things that I say. And I will try my best to make sure that I can either provide a source or substantiate and stuff. And it is frustrating when you see, Trump does it a lot as well. Will just say something, and because of how it sounds, they're just allowed to say that. And meanwhile, I'm trying to figure out to the nearest decimal point whether the thing I've said is correct, and I'm not checking it and stuff.
Lost art form.
But this is the era that we're now in. If we are in this period of emotionalism, as I think you've correctly put it, then it's about leveraging the right emotions. A lot of people are using fear to control people, but I think the world can be ruled by love as well. If we break it down, we all want very similar things as humans. Just spend time with your loved ones, not be in pain all the time, have a roof over your head, just the Maslowian things, really.
Yeah. And there are people out there who are advocating this message, right? The ARC conference, I don't know if you've heard about it. It's the thing that Jordan Peterson started. It's like a, what does it stand for now? Responsible citizenship, something like that. Association of Responsible, whatever it is. And it's trying to do that, advocate a positive message for conservatism. This is small C conservatism, not big C conservatism. I don't think it's party political in that way. But one of the people I think that's spreading love or trying to do good things is you, right? You are helping people one step at a time to take control, if you like, of their... See, this is the problem. Me saying take back control, just thinking that, my brain is just like, Brexit.
Yeah.
Because they've co-opted that term.
Yeah.
But you are helping people take back control. And I was talking to you just before we started recording about this person I was speaking to just a few days ago. It's sort of a younger brother of mine who was sharing with me that his finances aren't where he wants it to be. And one of the biggest stumbling blocks to him for sort of sorting that out was the feeling of shame and guilt he had of just like, I'm 25, I'm 26, I really shouldn't be here. When I look around, everyone's so much further ahead. Every time I feel like I'm making some headway financially, something happens and I'm right back at sort of ground zero.
Yep.
And it was really sort of beautiful conversation, but I just thought that's the kind of people you speak to online. So if you even had to speak to someone like that, so pretend I was him, like, what would you say?
So what's his current position?
I mean, I don't know to the decimal point, so how much money he has, but he's in debt. Let's just say he's generally in debt. There's a bunch of things he needs to confront, but it's that shame and guilt that's just sort of debilitating, such that he's in this cycle, if you like, of making money, plugging holes in the debt, but then things happen and, he's in a bit more debt, so on and so forth.
Yeah, it's just recognizing that you have debt. It's not part of you. It's part of an industry that makes a lot of money off of people going into their credit card balance, going into their overdraft balance, and then paying interest. And the way that it's set up is that interest accrues exponentially as well. So the system's against you. We aren't taught about money at home, all of us. We aren't necessarily taught about it in school, although they've just made that mandatory in a recent government announcement. And so there's a degree to which it's kind of not your fault. It's kind of like being handed the keys to a car and then being told, okay, drive to Manchester then. Like, how well is that going to go? So the important thing is to start with education, but also to give yourself grace. And I think I spoke about this with you one office ago on the previous podcast, and I think the clip did well as well. When it comes to things like debt, just writing down all of the providers that you've borrowed money from, all of your balances, all of your APRs, and then prioritizing them. You can prioritize them by the most expensive APR. So you're paying off the most expensive debt first. You can prioritize by the smallest balance first. So you can just, get rid of that card or that overdraft or whatever. And just coming up with a plan. And maybe you might have to do this with an advisor or a financial coach, because I've done this exercise with a number of different people. And then you can throw as much money as you are able to at your primary debt, and then do the minimums on the rest, and then rinse and repeat until it's all paid off. I think also there's a mindset piece here, which is something I'm working on too, which is that you cultivate an aspect of self-acceptance and self-love. And this is, I only found out about self-love when I was like 31. I was like, oh, wow. So my value doesn't rise and fall in relation to how much money I make, how many views I get on my social media. I'm just like, okay, which is not a way that I was brought up. But like, if you found out that a best friend of yours was in debt, you probably wouldn't chastise them or make them feel bad. You would give them a hug and talk to them and sit them down and try and help them to work out a way to deal with it. And part of growing older is about realizing that love that you've been given growing up, you need to be able to give that to yourself. I think a significant component of the debt thing is just psychological, like you mentioned, the shame and stuff.
Yeah, and I bring it up because I just know that. I mean, we started this conversation talking about how like financial content is ubiquitous. It's literally just everywhere. But I find not enough, and I'm glad because obviously I sat here with Ken from The Humble Penny as well not too long ago, and yourself and him, it was my first time speaking to him, but we've done 3 podcasts at this stage, right? I think, or maybe 4, I think it's 3. And you guys, one thing I appreciate the most about your content is there's a holistic approach. It's not just numbers and, invest in this stock, this is the right stock and all that sort of stuff. Just sort of, but you're dealing with again, wealth from a sort of holistic standpoint. And you guys deal with the underlying, because you can have all the information in the world. If you feel shame, you're just not going to deal with anything, right? You can have all and this is what I find. A lot of people, they know a lot of things, but guilt is just so heavy that at some stage you just leave things and it gets worse and worse and worse.
Well, could I pick up on that? Because you used the words guilt and shame. So the Brené Brown distinction between guilt and shame is really useful as well. So she says they're actually two separate things.
And she's a public speaker.
Yeah, TED speaker.
TED speaker, so forth, yeah.
So with Brené Brown, she says that you should focus on guilt instead of shame, because guilt focuses on action, whereas shame focuses on you, the person. Guilt is, I did a bad thing. Shame is, I am bad. And if you have shame, that's really, really difficult to come out of. But if you can separate yourself from the thing, hate the sin, not the sinner, so to speak.
You sound like a pastor, mate.
And then you can look at the thing that you're dealing with objectively, and then put a plan in place to deal with it. And again, these are things which you should be taught from when you're really young.
For sure.
And it's not done. So you have to, whenever you find out about these concepts, listen to them, understand them, put them into practice, and begin to change your mindset.
Yeah. He also spoke about how a lot of it comes from just comparison and looking at other people. And I find that so interesting because I looked at him, I just kind of smirked a bit because I thought to myself, it's so interesting how everyone's on the same journey, but because people don't speak enough, sometimes your brain plays tricks and you think, I am the only person feeling this kind of feeling that's extremely unique. It just isn't. One thing I shared with him was how, we are so bad at, comparing things because principally, one, as humans, I think we're actually subpar at doing it. But secondly, we all have imperfect information. So comparison is just a futile exercise, right? So we were having coffee, right? So there were two coffee cups, pretty much the same size that we had. And I kind of put them side by side. And I was like, okay, imagine someone just walked in and I was like, which one's the better coffee to them? Well, they would say, I don't know. I don't have enough information to be able to, I need to taste them. Can I open it? Well, you can't open it. You can't touch it. You can't pick one. He said that would be a ridiculous thing for me to ask them to do. Right. And I said, well, that's how ridiculous it is when you, knowing all your, behind the scenes knowledge, you know your life inside out, your thoughts, everything. You have 100% information about yourself. You got this person where you have 1% information about, and then you're making the comparison, right?
Yeah.
You don't know how they got there. You don't know how they have what they have. You just don't know the journey other people are on. And then equally, you don't know where people are going. You said right now, we're talking about life expectancy at the start. Some people, they are living a great life, quote unquote, from what you can see, but they only have 50 of those years, right? Whereas some people, it's at 36, they find their zing, and then they've got 40 more years, I could quote a million people who, started late. Ava DuVernay was a teacher and then picked up a camera in her, I don't know if it's late 30s or 40s or whatever, and now is doing what she's doing. Oprah Winfrey, we can go on and on and on. So the comparison piece I find so fascinating because no matter how much you tell people don't do it, it's so hard not to.
Yeah, so I'm on the journey with comparison as well, and I would say two things on it. One is what you just said, which is we have imperfect information, and therefore, if you're going to compare yourself to someone, you need to be willing to trade places with them entirely. Because what we normally do is we look at one very narrow thing and then compare our narrow thing to their narrow thing and then want to trade places. But it's no, if you're truly going to trade places with this person, you need to trade places with them entirely. That means having their historical and social context, all the bad things that have ever happened to them and all the good things that have ever happened to them. And if you look at comparison that way, I think a lot of us would actually realize that we're happy with the set of circumstances we have.
For sure.
That's the first thing. The second thing is, where I'm at right now with comparison is I compare and I do care what people think about, but I just try to keep that list necessarily small. So I keep that list to friends, family, and people that I respect. And it's like compare, but don't compare yourself to absolutely everybody.
And it's so interesting, I find, because there was a video, I don't know if you might have seen it. This is Elon Musk, and he was talking about how he says the things going on in his head, he wouldn't wish it on anybody.
I can imagine. I can imagine.
No, I don't know if that's because it's on the spectrum, whatever it is, but he was saying that his mind, he said he's tormented by his mind, right? Just a zillion ideas bouncing around. And it's funny, if you ask somebody, most young people, what do you want to, let's not even say young people, most people that I want to be rich. I want to be rich. What do you want to be? I want to be rich. But like the pressure, right? And I think of someone like him who's insanely rich, where everything feels like that you can do it. You have the potential to do everything, but you're getting older.
Yep.
Your bones are creaking, whether you like it or not.
Yep.
Your friendships are strained because you don't know who's there because they love you, who's there because of the money, who's playing the long game, who's playing the short game.
Yeah.
There's all sorts of like, what do I prioritize if I can do everything? You know, how do I ensure my legacy? What do I leave behind? How much do I leave behind? All these thoughts, he says, plague him. So to your point, if you asked me, Elon Musk, would you like his money? I'd be like, yeah. But again, do I want his whole life?
You need to also want to have 10 plus kids. Like it's also part of his lived experience.
That's well. So yeah, it's just not worth doing. I think everyone's meant to be in their unique lane, is meant to be doing their thing. And to dovetail to where we started, it's so interesting for me, encouraging to see you in your unique lane.
Thank you.
And just what you're doing.
I'm a gamer too. So there's like a mental model that I have from gaming. And do you know Street Fighter?
Come on.
Yeah. So I played Dalsim in Street Fighter, and I was trying to explain this to my...
All the time?
In the latest one, in Street Fighter 6, I main Dalsim. And my fiance doesn't know anything about games at all. So I was showing her videos on YouTube and also on my console of like, okay, this is Dalsim. He's like an Indian character. He's got really long, stretchy arms, and he breathes fire from his mouth. This character is called Zangief. Zangief's really big, he has no projectiles, and he's a wrestler, so he can't touch you from across the screen, but if he gets close to you and he throws you, you're dead in like 3 moves. And I was showing her how at the highest level, people have to play the matchup. If you try and play Dalsim like Zangief, you're gonna get smoked, and vice versa. So I think even like playing video games and getting quite good at them at points in my life has taught me that like, I am who I am. I've been born into the specific location, historical and social context I've been born into.
Yeah.
I have all my strengths and all my weaknesses. I have things I've got going for me and things that I'm probably don't have going for me. But like just based on who I am, where I am today, and how long I have left in my life, however long it lasts for, what matchup am I playing? And that brings me back to, okay, I've got a background in research. I understand social media fairly well. I'm a decent enough communicator. I have a good head for numbers. I like bringing people together. So why don't I set up a podcast with Black British guests where we just have deep chats and we talk about some of the things that we've never been able to talk about before publicly, that kind of thing. Whereas if I was playing the comparison game, I'd be looking at, that person over there's got that many followers, that person over there's done that brand deal, but they're playing their own matchup, their own unique circumstances and stuff. So that's how I also approach life, and it's served me really well.
Really good. That's a really good place to put a pin because it dovetails with what you've said. I mean, I would add to that, just giving yourself grace on that journey of figuring out who your character is. Because I do think, I always quote him, but Miles Davis once said, famous, many things, but famous trumpeter, that it takes you a while or a long time, he said, to learn how to play like yourself. Like it really, you have to probably start copying, you start mimicking, and at some stage you start to figure your own little licks out and your own little trademarks. And then you're like, hey, I'm in a really good place where I'm at peace with myself. I give myself grace. And I think that's when your life really begins, when you're sort of like, you don't really care what people think in that sort of debilitating way.
Yeah.
And it's a journey. And I think I just need people those listening or watching to just realize that it genuinely is a journey, and you should just give yourself grace on that journey. Part of it is definitely mimicking people. I did that for a long time. When I first started this network, I remember being told like no one's you have to wear a suit. So I literally would wear a suit. If you go back to old videos, I'd literally be there like, welcome to this episode of I'm just trying to copy Trevor McDonald or something something I saw. Then I went hard left and just wore shorts everywhere, and I was like, okay. So I was like, okay, maybe not. Now I'm in the middle, right? I've got more clothes on, and I'm sort of finding I like humor. I like a bit of seriousness. I can, I like an eclectic mix of, and that's a journey. It's taken like near enough 7 years to kind of actually go to figure out what my unique spot is. To your point.
And one of life's privileges is being able to go on that journey for yourself. And because we have the internet now, the TAM is 8 billion people. You just need to find a tiny, tiny percentage of everyone on the planet, basically, who likes you, buys into you, likes what you're putting out, and then just serve them.
This is it. And don't worry about everyone else. Thanks so much for this conversation. This
Thank
is really good. I've enjoyed this. We must do it again soon. I know, funny enough, we were both recently at the same place, but we missed each other.
Oh, where?
In Oxford.
Oh.
I spoke at...
Victor's. Shout out Victor.
Victor Sasagno, doing amazing work with valuable community, the valuable community. So I came... Because he's a brilliant young guy. I've known him for a number of years. I've always wanted to support what he does, but I've just never had the time. So I was actually meant to be in Portugal that day. So I wasn't meant to be doing it at all. And then 2 days before, I was like, I didn't want to go to Portugal because I just got back from Israel. And I was like, I'm going to go see it. I'm going to go. So I messaged him like, hey, this could probably mess up your plans, but I can make it now. Let's make it happen.
Sweet.
So I went there, but he then mentioned that you had spoken before.
Yeah.
So I was like, I missed him.
Yeah.
But what a cool environment.
Look, that was so inspiring. So I did my session on finance, but then I went to a men's only session. So they split the retreat into men and women. And a guy called Samuel ran it. Great guy. And it was me, like the uncle, in the room with all these 20-something guys. And we went round and we talked about vulnerability and working together and the role of a man in his family and in his community and stuff. And gosh, I had to be like, what was I doing when I was in my 20s? I wasn't putting on events or going to events like this. So things are looking really positive for that generation. And it's like the older ones now. We have to support them.
Well, slow down, buddy. No, you are right. I am part of, I'm on my first step now of the third floor. Yeah. So I've got time to buckle up my ideas.
Yeah, man.
Thank you, Timmy. And looking forward to the next one.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for watching this episode all the way to the end. Here's what I need you to do for me now. Would you hit the subscribe button? That way this podcast can grow and we can invite even bigger guests. Don't forget to drop a comment as well. Let me know what you enjoyed, what you didn't enjoy. I read every single comment and I look forward to seeing you in the next episode.